champions. The Champions League is down to its final 4 teams. We have Real Madrid playing Juventus in the semifinal, and Barcelona
playing Real Salt Lake City
versus Bayern Munich in the other semifinal. Basically, the 2 opposite matchups from what I predicted. But you know what? That doesn't really matter because we're gonna get our. Well, let's start with Real Juventus.
Okay, you want to start?
We'll work our way up to the.
So do we want to start with the transfer ban? Because that's what I want to start with.
I don't know the details of it yet. So that's not like we don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, but it's juicy. It's
fun.
Sure,
it's juicy. But okay, sure. What do you want to say about
it? It seems right now like it's going to be the same situation as Barca, and it's actually not just Real Madrid. It would be Atletico Madrid too.
Okay.
And apparently Villarreal's under investigation as well. To be honest, I'm not 100% sure what the issue is, but with registering young players, they want to make sure these guys, they're in academy, they're getting the education they deserve, which is fair. Sometimes the school gets overlooked for soccer, like it happens here in college sports.
Right.
So they're looking at right now it would be a 2-window transfer ban, summer and then next January.
And
of course, we know they're likely to appeal it like with Barca, so they'll be able to make their buys this summer, which is what makes it interesting.
But then if it happens, then they'll be banned.
It would be next summer.
January and next
right.
summer. So they'd basically be banned for the entire year of 2000, the calendar year of 2016.
Not one buy.
But we saw what Barcelona did this past summer, where they just went out and they just plugged every hole they could. They spent their money.
And they did it well.
Yeah, and they're fine. Honestly, if you put a transfer ban on Real Madrid right now, they'd be fine for the next year or so.
They'd be fine, but they wouldn't be content being who they are.
Yeah, of course.
They don't have that stability that Barca usually has, a little more patient with their buys.
They could have the best player in every position in the world, and they would still not be content with still would be wanting to improve. On the field wise, you don't see the only real holes that you see are sort of the defensive midfield role, which we've talked about extensively. The holding midfield role, the possession kind of role that we've talked about previously, they've obviously have that filled nicely with Modric, who's out for the rest of the season, but obviously will be back.
And Toni Kroos.
Toni Kroos, obviously. Even Asier Illarramendi, who hasn't been amazing.
This has got to be the best day of his life. There's no way he's leaving.
Well, yeah.
Now.
But, he's the most under-the-radar 30 million buy of all time. So they have those players. They don't need necessarily anyone in that holding midfielder role. It's just the defensive midfielder role that we've seen every successful team of the past decade have at least someone who's better than average in that role. They just don't really have anyone right now apart from Sami Khedira, and he's been on and off the field. So that's something they would need to address very, very quickly as soon as that ban gets lifted while they appeal it. And if they don't address it, then that's really the only area I could see them suffering in.
You don't think they'd like a little more depth up top? I think they're going to keep Chicharito now.
Well, that's
not really the area of concern, but
they never should have sold Alvaro Morata to Juventus in the first place, and he'll have a chance to come back and stick it to the club that gave him his first chance.
So they do have a buy option back on him, I think, at some point.
Sure they do, but he has
to be okay.
He's been good, but he hasn't been great. You'd understand if they didn't exercise it and they went ahead and they either tried to buy Chicharito for as a
depth guy, rotation player,
exactly, or maybe even went for someone I don't know. Alexandre Lacazette is a name that I've heard thrown out there from Lyon.
He seems to be the next guy up.
They're always looking for the next big thing. That's just Real Madrid's forte. So I don't think this is too big of a deal to them. I think it's a bigger deal to Atletico, because Atletico are always going to have their successful players be dragged away from them for bigger clubs. Real Madrid, there aren't other clubs coming in poaching Real Madrid's best players like there might be with
who they're
Atletico.
casting off is more how that works.
Exactly. So it's definitely a big deal for Atletico.
I guess one last. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, it'll just be another hurdle for Diego Simeone to overcome, and I trust him to.
So I think the one thing that and we don't know how it's going to play out. The one thing that may be affected by this and you and I have always thought it's more rumors. There's not much to it. Is the future of Gareth Bale? There's no way I would think right now he's going to get sold because they just can't find another player of his quality. Even though they could sell him to fund a lot of these moves, I think it's more likely they dip into what they have, if anything, to add to the team, and they're not going to let him go without a direct replacement for a year.
Well, the direct replacement that people have really been calling for is James Rodriguez. They've arguably played their best
to pitch him out a little wider and bring his go up the middle.
Yeah, I mean it makes a lot of sense. Yeah. You've got a number of different things you could do there. They had so much confidence in him that they shipped off Angel Di Maria, who by no means was bad for them last year. He helped them win the Champions League last year. So, and then this year, James Rodriguez has been on the field and has been present and threatening every single time they've looked there.
That was a great move for him, and I think we've talked about that.
He scored some great goals, though.
He's phenomenal, even on creating for himself, creating for the team. And a lot of people thought, oh, he just had a good World Cup. They're just bringing the next
link-up play between Cristiano and him in the lead-up to Chicharito's goal against
He was what they needed, and that was the right move for them to buy him. So, obviously, I'm thrilled to see him do so well.
Talking about Real Madrid and Juventus, I'm guessing we're both leaning towards Real on this one.
Yeah, we both took Atletico last round, and we were a little surprised at how it played out.
I wasn't surprised Real won because we both acknowledged that they were the favorites just because on paper they're
more
the favorites.
talented. Yeah.
But what I talked about last time and what Atletico have done so well to sort of restrict Real Madrid, they weren't really able to do because of their own sort of attacking intent. Once they started to realize that, this is 0-0, it's been 0-0 for almost 180 minutes. We've got to get forward. We've got to grab a goal. So once they started doing that, open themselves up, they're letting Real Madrid basically get the kind of chances that they thrive upon. The chances where,
exactly.
I mean, obviously any team can thrive with a counterattack where you've basically caught a team out. It's 2-on-2 or 3-on-2 or something like that, and it's a frantic sprint from half field to the opposing goal. That's something almost any team in the world can do well at. But what Real Madrid kind of set themselves apart doing compared to other teams is they're very good at counterattacking as it kind of looks like Atletico. Well, we'll use the goal as an example, but there were multiple other examples of it in this game, and then even in the game this weekend against was it Getafe? Who did they play this weekend? I can't remember. I remember seeing a couple of goals from this past weekend. Celta Vigo, sure. Where the entire 11 of Atletico Madrid are getting back. They're watching the ball and they're all settling into their positions and they're getting ready to defend. But right as they're just in the split, like 1 or 2 seconds before they're about to get set and turn and square themselves up to defend, Cristiano Ronaldo plays a quick ball into James Rodriguez and just cuts immediately towards the goal, and a quick 1-2, they're in, and he can just lay it back for Chicharito to score. It was the kind of thing. It wasn't what you'd call like your definition of a counterattack, but it was kind of like that strange limbo between the transitional phase of them transitioning to the defense and them getting set into that defense. And that Real Madrid do it better than anyone apart from Barcelona that I can think of.
Well, so we both took Atletico, and part of that was as well, we liked style-wise. It's not always just about the talent you have. It's how it fits, how you're coached, and of course style. And this is their first loss to them in 8 matchups on the year now.
Yeah, they spanked Real Madrid earlier this year.
A bunch of times.
The problem is that they did it. They did it arguably in not as big or high pressure situations.
Sure,
it was the quarterfinals of the Champions del Rey.
Oh.
So they did beat Real, but Real Madrid are at the end of the year they're either going to be champions or top 2 in the league. While Atletico, I don't think really have a chance of retaining La Liga. So and then Real Madrid beat them in the quarterfinals to get to the semifinals. So they may have only lost technically to Real once,
But it was the most meaningful one.
But when you look at this year, it was the most meaningful game of the year and had such a big effect on what these two teams take out of the season that you had to say Real Madrid, as of now, if like everything goes according to plan, Real will probably be considered to have the better season than Atletico. But talking about how they fare against Juventus, the Pogba injury just kind of neuters this one for me. Because, I mean...
Yeah, anytime you got a team that's, and these, again, are all amazing teams, otherwise we wouldn't be in the semifinals of Champions League, but where one's an underdog, and then you have a key guy who's out, it just kind of ruins, the they-could-do-it thing.
I mean, they certainly still have a chance.
Right, they have 16 very good players on that team.
Pirlo, the last 1 or 2 games I've seen him, they lost to Torino this past weekend in Serie A, which certainly looks bad, but they've had that wrapped up for a good while. But even the 2 games against Monaco, I mean, they beat Monaco, but it wasn't
anything except for 1 goal differential.
It wasn't anything convincing. And Pirlo was the player that I've always been a huge fan of his, and he was kind of not mediocre, but just kind of average. He wasn't
influential on the field.
Yeah, he wasn't. He hasn't been really performing and influencing the game the same way as we're so accustomed to seeing him do. The player I was really impressed with was Claudio Marchisio. He's kind of filled in where Andrea Pirlo has left off. Obviously, he's a bit younger. He's maybe like 28, 29. It might be even early 30s. I can't remember. So he certainly is more suited. Like he's a very suitable replacement to like fill in for what Paul Pogba is going to be. They're going to be missing with Paul Pogba out. But it just would have been so much better for them if they could have maybe pushed Vidal forward into that more attacking role. Maybe let Pirlo sit back and just let Pirlo focus on retaining possession and not giving it away, while Pogba and Marchisio kind of wreak havoc and try and win the ball back. But now you're setting up without Pogba with Pirlo, Marchisio, Vidal as your center midfield 3, and you're not really giving Andrea Pirlo much room to
mess up.
Yeah, there's not much room to really make a mistake here, just because any little mistake that he makes or any lapse in athleticism that he's bound to concede to most of Real Madrid's players could really, really make them pay. So the first leg's in Turin, which obviously statistically it doesn't always help if you have the second leg at home, but I mean it's a psychological thing.
It's always mentally.
They go into Turin and they win 1-0 or they tie the game. They grab 1 away goal, and I mean I've got to pick Real again. Not again. I didn't pick them last round, but I'm gonna have to pick Real for this one.
Yeah, I wouldn't say they're the prohibitive favorites, but they're definitely the strong ones in this one. There's a lot less to doubt in this one. You'd have to see a few things maybe going wrong for them to get outplayed over 180 minutes.
Right. The other Patrice Evra has been playing better at left back for Juve, but whether it's Bale or James Rodriguez, or whether Ronaldo gets rotated out to that right wing to go against Patrice Evra, I think that's a
troublesome matchup for.
That's a troublesome matchup for Juve, despite his experience. But then again, if you look over on the other side with Lichtsteiner, that's another relatively old and not really athletic player. It's tough. I kind of see this one playing out the same way the Atletico game played out. Juve know that they're not really the favorites. I just see them really sitting back and absorbing wave after wave of attack from Real Madrid, which isn't necessarily what Real even do well. Like I said, they don't really operate as well in those confined spaces that as Barca or Bayern might. So it's really up to Rodriguez. It's up to Cristiano. It's up to Isco to find a way through, and it could be tight. I think it's going to be maybe 3-2 or something overall over the 2 legs, something like that.
I could see it being like a 3-1, 4-1, but
You think that?
It only
that much?
because in these two leg scenarios, you see things get, if it's a 1 goal differential, a little looser at the end, a little more desperation, and a meaningless goal is scored that kind of betrays the overall feel of it.
I definitely see a couple of howlers from Casillas though. I can definitely see that happening.
So?
He is Tevez has been in good enough form, maybe not as much recently, but he's the kind of player who knows when to assert himself for certain games, and obviously these 2 games are going to be that kind of magnitude of games. That I could definitely see him having a couple cracks at goal that Casillas just judges wrong or just are too good for him.
He's 3 matches away though from having won back-to-back. Well, obviously not him himself winning or being even a key figure, but back-to-back Champions League, being the first keeper to do that, part of the first team to do that, and then getting shipped out, which is...
He's not getting shipped out.
You think he's just moving on to the bench?
He's a Real club legend. He's not getting shipped out anytime soon.
I think he'll want to play somewhere, though.
I don't necessarily think so. He's accomplished all there is to accomplish. He's probably in the discussion for greatest goalkeeper of all time, but not really convincing just because he doesn't really have the...
You think it's more on the strength of his resume than...
Well, yeah, it's on his resume rather than the eye test and watching his performances. He's never been he never had a dominating run like Buffon had in 2006 or Van der Sar had and Schmeichel had for almost a decade. People have always just appreciated him for him being a great player. They never really appreciated him for being the best at his position, which I think goes a long way into the best of all time argument. If you weren't even the best of your position for a period of your career, then you can't be in that argument. So, but you think Real will win also?
I'll take them, and like I said, I think it'll end up being a 2-goal. Yeah.
That definitively? I don't know.
They're starting to get it a little more together than they are.
That's true. But this is Juve, and
all 4 teams are wonderful right now, right? And this is, I suppose, the best draw Juventus could ask for, which just kind of tells you what teams are left.
Right. Yeah. It's the best draw both teams could have asked for, which doesn't really work out that way.
No one wanted the other side of it. I don't know if you want to segue into that.
Well, absolutely. This is probably since... last year was the last time I can remember being so excited about a semifinal.
So, I don't know about you, because I know we both predicted you for first time. Obviously, it'll play out with Real Madrid going up against Barcelona, Bayern getting Juventus, and then we'll see, in all likelihood, Bayern versus Barca in the final. But I almost prefer it this way, because I think...
For a El Clasico final?
No, actually no, because to me the 2 best teams are clearly right now in the world in terms of form, Barcelona and Bayern Munich. And I'd rather, maybe see it decided over 3 hours
rather than the one game.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I can see that. There's an argument to that. You get to get more TV money from showing that game twice. I don't know. I guess there's something. There was some feeling in my gut that thought to myself, "Oh, how great of a final would that be?" 2 almost flawless teams.
Well, the 2 best teams. I think
the 2 best teams, and then 2 impregnable teams that have not just won in their own leagues, but have just been dominating these past 2 or 3 months. Barca obviously struggled a little bit at the beginning. But once it clicked, they
are really now, especially with Suarez going back to the monster that he is, just working beautifully as a team.
Well, they brought him into that lineup. Took a little bit of time to shake off the rust from being out for so many months. But then as soon as him and Lionel Messi established the fact that they wanted Suarez to play as the central striker and Lionel and Neymar to start rotating on different wings together and maybe having a more free-flowing approach to their front 3, that's when it really took off for me. You see players... Suarez has pretty much been in the same central role, but as a defender, to have to account not only for Suarez, who's now in close to his best form, but then Lionel Messi, who's back at his best form, and Neymar, who's been pretty close to his best also. It's a nightmare to deal with, and Bayern they'll have their strongest back line, They no David Alaba, the Austrian left back, who's probably been if there was a most improved player of the year award, it would go to him, in Germany at least. But they have Juan Bernat playing at left back, who's been like a good stand-in
and
for
a great
him.
buy.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, Philip Lahm at right back. Jerome Boateng in the last 2 years has become a world-class center back out of
Funny how
nowhere.
City just didn't care and wasted a talent
after
like
just
that,
being given up on by City, and Javi Martinez or Mehdi Benatia will be both
Javi
be
Martinez,
available.
your favorite?
I really like him too. Yeah,
Your favorite center back?
Yeah, I wish he'd be played at center midfield, but they don't need to play him there.
He's so versatile. That's part of what makes him amazing.
Right.
Oh.
So I think it'll be fun because there won't be really any excuses if one team tears apart the other. It'll be this team was definitively better.
It makes you wonder when they play a guy like Dante. You're like, that is, if anything,
if Dante was in, then I could see Bayern fans being pretty. You can be worried whether you have your best four or not. Yeah. But with Dante in there, especially, you're in trouble. For me, it's really the play of those attacking midfielders. Lewandowski, I don't think he obviously wasn't in that form of when Dortmund made it to the final a couple of years ago, and he was
traumatized Real Madrid.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously he's never gone back to that kind of form, but I still think he's like a really, really just solid and dependable front man for them. Obviously Muller's another option, but then I'm just worried about whether those attacking midfielders, whether Robin, Götze, Ribery, Schweinsteiger, Xabi Alonso, all of them. Thiago's come back from injury and has performed pretty well. Whatever combination of those players that are chosen to play in midfield and initiate the attacks against Barcelona, the first most important thing is going to be making sure you don't give away the ball immediately after you win it back, because obviously that's what Barcelona have thrived at since 2006 or 2007. It's just how they defend, and they're very good at it. And so they have the players to certainly keep the ball there. Then once they cross into that final third, it becomes a whole different question of whether they'll even be able to break down Piqué and Mascherano and Jeremy Mathieu and Dani Alves and whichever one of the two goalkeepers Barcelona select. It's the most even semi-final, it's the most even juggernaut matchup I can think of. These teams are practically mirror images of each other.
So that's kind of why I feel like I need 3 hours of it.
Guardiola's
that's
fault.
the one. But it's great. I'm glad. You know what? I'm glad at least we're getting this matchup, because something screwy happens in the semifinals maybe, and then we don't see it. At least we're guaranteed of it now.
That's true. Ultimately, I'm happy for it. I'm not happy that I'm.
You would have preferred it one round later.
I'm not happy that I was wrong and that, like I said, that.
Yeah.
But it's a win-win for UEFA and for the Champions League and for soccer fans everywhere, because you want to see these kind of games. I just wish they were on weekends.
Yeah.
There's something about that Champions League final being on a Saturday afternoon.
It draws it. So many times I've watched with friends who don't even care for soccer. Like, wow, this is just majestic because the whole atmosphere.
Right. There were.
You're seeing the best play. It's just such a great advertisement for the sport.
Right. A great example I remember is 2010.
When Inter versus Bayern Munich?
No, different year. 2011, I want to say then. It was the last time United and Barcelona played, and it was at Wembley. Barcelona won 3-1 or something. It was a pretty good game, but it was never really in doubt that Barca were going to lose. But soccer fans everywhere, those were two names that everyone knew, but it was the kind of game that didn't happen every year, because obviously there are two different leagues, and that's why we have this competition, so that these kind of teams can play each other, and that's why that's the main reason I'm looking forward to this Bayern Barca game. It's going to be a treat to watch. But
there's one matchup. I think we would have both picked this one as the matchup of the year we want to see.
Right.
Yeah.
Who do you think is going to win? The first game is at the Camp Nou, and then it goes back to the Allianz Arena.
I think Barcelona, and if you ask me to pick a scoreline, I will go 4-3.
Barca? I was going to say Bayern.
Oh, there we go. Finally, we have a difference on.
Yeah, okay.
On this one. We've been pretty in line with our Champions League predictions for the most part.
No, I think Bayern get up for this one.
Okay.
I think Barca they've been accustomed to having their way with teams, even with Real.
Yeah, absolutely. They've made Real Madrid play their game.
Yeah, it's and Bayern's the one team that I think it will really depend what kind of adjustments they make. And Bayern, I said this on an earlier podcast that Bayern are pissed after last year.
Well, so not only that, you said with adjustments, it's 2 rounds in a row now. First versus Shakhtar Donetsk, and now Porto, where they actually went down 3-1.
Yeah, but it was never really.
Well, that's the point. But both times they've been like, we are not even going to play around in the second leg.
I remember texting you right after that first leg in the Porto
I was like,
game.
are they going to win by 6 or 7?
We're not concerned about this second leg, are we? We're just like, no, we're not. No. We're not concerned. It'll be fine.
And it played out as we expected, but it's crazy to see a team do that to, a Porto team that came this far, that was one of the final 8, and just completely have their way, make a 2-goal irrelevant.
Bayern's lucky that they had that semi-capitulation against a team like Porto, because if they
they're not chasing down a 3-1 scoreline versus Barcelona.
If they have anything like that against Barca, then you can pack your bags and head back to Munich, because you're not.
But like you said, they're mad last year. They got torn. Was 7-0, 7-1 against Real Madrid in the semifinals.
Well, the worst was they were ripped at home.
Oh.
They were
because that was the second leg.
Yeah, I mean it was terrible for them. Almost as traumatizing as that losing that Champions League final at home to us, which is traumatizing in and of itself. So I think that kind of puts into perspective just how bad that was. I mean, the only thing that really trumps that for me is comparable to that is the 7-1 Brazil loss to Germany.
Still never failed to be upset that Oscar scored that goal. I wanted it to be 7-0.
You wanted to be 7-0. Us Chelsea players, they always grab a goal. So we think Real. I think Real Bayern in the final. You think Real?
I think Real Barcelona
would be a shitstorm if that happened. Oh my!
I think whoever comes out of this semifinal, doesn't matter, is going to win.
I don't think that's necessarily true. I think if Bayern comes out, Real Madrid match up so well against Bayern that they could beat them like they did last year. And then if Barca come out, then Barca know exactly how to play around Real Madrid and beat them. So Barca would probably be favored.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think whoever wins between Barca or Bayern is going to beat Real Madrid anyway.
No, I'm saying the opposite. I'm saying Barca will beat Real Madrid.
Oh, but you're not saying Real Madrid will beat Barca. Okay, gotcha.
I'm saying that Real Madrid would beat Bayern.
Okay, understood. But none of us have Juventus winning in any games.
No, but I do. I think it's going to be close, though, and I think people are going to be nervous about Real Madrid because they didn't really because they haven't destroyed Juventus, and that will lead everyone to say what you just said about the winner of that semifinal being the odds-on favorite to win, and I just don't think that's completely true. A team like Real Madrid can never be completely counted out,
I mean, I guess Spain's got the only domestic league that's even somewhat up in the air too, because of the major ones, we know Inter's winning in Italy, we know Bayern already won in Germany, we know Chelsea's going to win in England, so. And we have
France.
Lyon and
France is
PSG.
Really
you're right.
Grabs, yeah. That's a hell of a race. So, the first round of the playoffs for the neutral. I guess I should clarify.
Nice transition there. Thank you.
First round of the basketball playoffs, NBA playoffs.
So FC Barcelona versus.
Yeah. They've been kind of boring, like I said. For the neutrals, but for a Wizards fan like me, they've been a ton of fun. What was your take on those? On basically the sweeps, basically just the.
Okay, let's see. So let me just run them down real quick. So we got Hawks Nets tied 2-2. We got Bucks and Bulls going to 6 now.
It's 3-2 Bulls going to Game 6 in Milwaukee.
But I don't think the Bulls. I think that's another one that while the Bucks have been competitive, that 3-2 isn't really indicative. Like, I'd be shocked if I went to Game 7.
Well, yeah,
Bulls are going to drop that series. Well, then we got the Cavs and Cavs swept them. That was
walked over Boston, but had to pay the price of losing Kevin Love for the rest of the playoffs.
And then we we have the sweep, the Wiz 50 sweep. So I know you're thrilled about that.
Hey, the door, it's not open. I'm not going to say it's open to get to the finals.
I'd say it's fairly open now with Kevin Love. You have a chance to get to the finals and get demolished by the Warriors very easily.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I want the right to get destroyed by the Warriors. That'd be fun. Atlanta, like you just said, are tied 2-2 and haven't looked convincing at all. But I was saying that this to Chris Shimura, who we had in the pod maybe a couple months ago. He's a Hawks fan, and I was saying to him, like, you guys look bad, but you know that it was that game last night, especially Game 4. It was the kind of game where just like their shots just weren't falling. Like,
And it happens, right?
It was in and out kind of stuff where like any other day where like one or two shots go down for quarter or something, and they're up 3-1, and this is a walkover.
I think there's precedent for even the Hawks to get hot. Like 2008 when the Celtics won their title with the Big Three, plus Rajon Rondo. Actually, the Hawks had them on the ropes in round 1 when they were trading off wins and pushed them to Game 7, I believe as an 8 seed, or if not as a 7 seed. And yet, you know, the Celtics came together, figured it out, stopped playing complacently, and won the title against my Lakers. So,
yeah, I just.
I mean, you know, I don't really believe in the Hawks too much. I've been far lower on them than most, and I've probably watched them play.
It's just the bad shooting just kind of bugs me.
I still will take the Wizards over them.
I mean, that's why I'm saying the Wizards have a chance against them because of their bad shooting. The Nets are by no means a good defensive team. They've had a couple really, really terrible lapses that you just kind of sit there and go, oh, it's just the Nets. Like, the Nets will be the Nets. And the Wizards are... We may be terrible offensively coming out of timeouts thanks to...
Randy Whitman.
Thanks to Randy Whitman, yeah. But on defense, he's definitely got our guys all focused in on one common goal. And that's hustle, contest shots, and box out on defense. We're not necessarily trying to block shots, or our big men aren't trying to block shots, but we're boxing out well, and we're eating the glass, just absolutely destroying it. It helps that we're against an undersized team like Toronto, but I think Atlanta provides a very similar matchup. Still tougher, but it's a very similar matchup to Toronto.
So the Wizards just had a brilliant series. I don't want to dwell too much on the negatives, but if there's any, whatever the opposite of a silver lining is, it's got to be that Randy Whitman just earned himself a little more job security, which, you know, if he keeps coaching like this for the most part, it's fine. It's become a different coach.
But I mean, as a fan, like, you can't... I despise Randy Whitman at times. Like, I wish we had, like, obviously everyone in the league wish they had someone like a Steve Kerr who's got his offense absolutely like a well-oiled machine. Everyone's timing is perfect. They're coming off screens perfectly for each other and working completely in sync. But, like, obviously the realistic take on this is just that's not going to happen. So you do the best with what you got. And you know what? If you set expectations at the beginning of the year and the guy exceeds them or meets them, then you have to bring it back. It's a matter of principle. Like, you just have to bring him back. I wouldn't agree with it for, like, the long-term future, but, like, year by year, and as a team that's trying to basically establish itself as, like, a desirable free agent destination, you know, a team that free agents will look at and say, oh, they're one piece away. Maybe I can be that one piece.
Kind of like with what happened with Paul Pierce this summer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Paul Pierce, I'm talking about like a star. I'm talking about like obviously
You're talking about Kevin Durant.
Well, no, Kevin Durant, I think
Durant.
that's out of the door. That's out the window. That's not happening. I don't think so. But, you know, you still want to be competitive. You still want to, like, make yourself a desirable option for maybe like Kevin Love or someone like that. Or you just never know. You know, you can be a team like Houston who one year is just filled with rotation players, and the next year they trade a couple of them for James Harden, and now all of a sudden Dwight Howard
or the
wants to come and
Clippers
play.
with Chris Paul. Even when they had Blake Griffin, it was as soon as they got Chris Paul, everyone wants to play for the Clippers now.
Exactly. Your fortunes can change that quickly. So to stay competitive and stay a relevant team, I think it's been fun, honestly. And as fans, you just want to have fun.
And it's almost the go ahead, yeah.
Your team.
It's almost the exact opposite step that Toronto took, you know, with finishing the season at something like 13-15 and then getting swept out, where they were looking like they could be a team that would be an attractive destination, good crowds on the way up, and then now just looking like they might have to tear down that team. It might have already hit its ceiling and peaked after starting off the year so hot. But moving on, I guess, to the West, we just saw Houston eliminate the Mavs. We saw the sweep with Golden State over the Pelicans. What am I missing here? Now we have Game 5 going on right now, Spurs versus Clippers. And, yeah, Memphis is up 3-1 on Portland.
Right, I missed that game last night. Okay. I mean, that Memphis-Portland series is over.
So, to me,
Portland's playoffs were over as soon as Wes Matthews got injured.
I was going to say, Wes Matthews, we agreed, was a huge thing, not just for what he brings there, but just how he completes that team, how he changes how they play defensively, how they're guarded.
I give him a little bit of a chance just because of Aflalo. Like, he was like a ready-made replacement to kind of slip into that role that Matthews kind of took up on that team, but he was really subpar from the few games I saw. Damian Lillard became a shell of himself offensively, had a couple terrible games. I mean, you could argue the only reason they won last night was because Mike Conley was out of the game. You know, like with Mike Conley, and that's just a guy that Damian Lillard has to at least consider accounting for defensively. And as soon as he starts thinking about using energy on defense, it immediately just detracts from his offensive game. And now you're basically working with an offense of a tired Damian Lillard and LaMarcus Aldridge shooting long contested twos. Like, it just doesn't work.
That's another team now that they made themselves a question mark when they really weren't before this postseason. LaMarcus Aldridge walk. Spurs would be a great destination for him.
Wizards.
Well, a little more realistically.
Yeah, we're a bit too wrapped up in their contracts.
But yeah, I don't think that was a possibility at all before this all went south. It shows how one little thing can just throw off a team's future potentially. We could see him resign, but he looks very open to leaving. He wasn't open to leaving before.
I know this is kind of like a quick take on what's happened in the playoffs so far. We can't really talk too much about the second round until all the matchups are set. But one thing that looks fairly certain from the first round and what we can take away from it is that it's going to be the Golden State Warriors in the
I picked them.
Finals. Which, I mean, everyone was picking them, which is kind of why I didn't pick them. But I think what's really worked in their favor, obviously everyone knew that they were going to sweep that New Orleans team, but they did have a very impressive comeback in the third game, which was kind of like a test game for them, where just to make sure they're still sharp, and they proved to everyone that they still are. But what's really going to give them just a nice stroll to the NBA Finals is this second round matchup with Memphis. And now that Conley's injured, he may miss the entire series or play it with a mask on. He has something like a fractured eye socket or something like that.
Facial injuries, whatever.
And I mean, he's the kind of player that you need at 100%, if not like a little bit better than that, to make Steph have to think about both ends of the ball. Now, or both sides of the court. You know, I think it's because of that injury. I'm sure Memphis will win a game, maybe two. But I think it's a walk in the park.
That one will be, and the funny thing is, I think that one will actually be tougher. Not that I think it's too tough. I agree with you.
No, a healthy Memphis, yes, is tougher.
Well, but I think it'll be tougher than the Western Conference Finals because the Rockets and Clippers, though very good, are still flawed teams. You know, like,
well, I mean that other side of the bracket, I can't really speak too much to. That is definitely more of a juggernaut, but where that works in favor of the Warriors, assuming that they beat Memphis, like I'm saying they will, is that whatever team of Houston, the Clippers, and San Antonio Spurs get to the conference finals, they're going to have gone through a juggernaut. Maybe not Houston so much, but that series will be tough for them, whether it's San Antonio or LA. And if it's either one of those San Antonio or Clippers teams, then they'll have gone through two straight grueling series to get to the conference finals and earn the right to get destroyed by Golden State. So I personally just think it's just become a walk in the park for Golden State.
Well, that's what I'm
going to
saying.
stroll to the finals.
It's that's what I was saying. That's very easy for them to take on the Clippers or Houston after Memphis. Memphis will be more tricky for them even without Conley, just because of matchups.
And now I can maybe even make the argument that Golden State just has a clear shot at the title because we're not seeing Cleveland reaching their like third or fourth gear now. They were kind of in first or second, just sort of cruising along in this Boston series, and you kind of got the feeling that they were just going to win their games in this, move on, play Chicago, which is presumably play Chicago, probably have a tougher series against them, and sort of shift through the gears and get better and better as they face tougher opponents and tougher matchups leading up to that Golden State series in the finals. But now with Kevin Love out, kind of changes like everything they do with their offense. I mean, they slide LeBron into power forward where Kevin Love is or was. You know, they have to play multiple wings now, so they're going to be having multiple lineups of Kyrie, Iman Shumpert, and J.R. Smith, along with LeBron and Mozgov. I mean, they'll still get to the finals, I think, but now they don't have a shot at beating Golden State, which whatever shot they had before, it's pretty much gone. So yeah, thanks for listening to our podcast this week. Hope you enjoy all the great sports that are going on this weekend, and hopefully we'll see you next week.